the quest to find ways to fight gender-based violence, one social construct, patriarchy, keeps coming up as the biggest deterrent to actual change. This seemingly unbreakable feature of our lives also extends to the working place, making women who are perfectly capable still feel beholden to male approval. Nadia Moosajee is an engineer and has devoted her life to using her professional accomplishments to bring about equality. She wears many hats, and one of them is founder of WOMHUB. Nadia, thank you so much for making the time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me this morning, Desiree.
Nadia, how are gender stereotypes fostering patriarchy in the professional space, and how is gender-based violence manifesting in this space?
And Desiree, it's such a big question, right? Because, there's still, and we're in 2021, we're almost in 2022, and we still have these notions of what women should do, supposed to do. Coming from an engineering industry, we do a lot of work around outreach for girls. People are still going, oh, but that's a man's job, that's a woman's job. In our media, we're still seeing very much, the gendered stereotypes of women in the workplace. And COVID hasn't really helped women throughout this pandemic. We've taken some steps back in terms of, some of the gains that we made for women taking their rightful spaces across different spaces. And then it's also around kind of women in leadership, right? And so, there's so few women at the top. And when they do get to the top, they face so much more scrutiny than anybody else. And, the media is also very unkind to women in leadership. And that all just speaks to, the entrenched patriarchy in our society, right? And so, personally, I faced many conversations where they go, oh, Nadia, you're an engineer. How does your husband feel about this? I mean, I was an engineer before I got married. When you're traveling a lot for work, people will go, oh, but, does the male relatives in your family let you do that, right? And so it's this whole kind of permission-based culture for women to be whatever they want to be, right? And it becomes entrenched so much in culture and society that it takes so much more effort and energy for women to kind of break free from these shells of patriarchy to be able to thrive in the working world. And it's across the board, it's everything. And, we're working in STEM, and, STEM is so critical to get our economies back on track, etc. But if you look at girls, for example, the girls as young as 5 years old are going, they're not good enough, they're not smart enough to go in and do, maths and science. And there's all these perceptions and stereotypes. I mean, there's nothing engendered about science and mathematics, but it starts as young as 5, and it works its way up all the way to the boardroom.
Did I hear you right? Did you say people ask you if male relatives allow you to work as an engineer?
And travel. And it's a crazy question, right?
Yeah. Now tell me, women in top corporate positions of power also suffer gender-based violence, and they keep silent about it. Give us a sense of the scale and why this demographic, which is perceived to have a voice, chooses to stay silent. We made an example earlier in our conversation about Dr. Thandi Ndlovu, who passed away and her family confirmed as a result of gender-based violence.
And Dr. Thandi Ndlovu's case was so close to home for me, because she was one of the first women I approached when we had this idea to support women and girls in the engineering and tech industry. And she has been she was such an exceptional supporter to support other women getting into leadership positions. And it broke my heart when I found out that she not only had to crawl her way through the top of a really tough industry that was very male dominated, but she didn't even have a reprieve at home. And the reason why a lot of women in power stay silent about gender-based violence is because there's so much shame attached to it, right? And they've got to be the poster girl for, having gone to the top and having achieved in a leadership position, right? And they don't have the space to be able to actually just talk about some of the challenges that they're having personally. And sometimes, and we've seen this, so it's in women in leadership, it's, when sports teams play, gender-based violence increases, right? And it's about the power dynamic that is in relationships that happen out. And so, my heart just bleeds for her and all the other women in leadership who are having to face, challenges in corporate and then still challenges at home, and can't talk about it because, they've been perceived as weaker in the system that we've got, right? And so, if you can't stand up for yourself at home, how are you going to stand up for your company in a boardroom, right? That's been a conversation that I've heard from male CEOs. And so for me, that kind of narrative just lends itself to this continuous perpetuation of gender-based violence for women in leadership as well.
Nadia, on the flip side, let's speak to the power and agency of women in the workplace. What have the courageous women like yourself done to turn things around?
And this is what gives me hope. This is what gets me up in the morning. So it's the work that we're doing at WOMHUB and WOMENG to support women in the engineering and tech and entrepreneurship space. I'm part of something called the Influential Women Circle, which are made up of incredible women entrepreneurs and women leaders across industries who are setting the pace for change and supporting women and girls through collaborations with organizations like UNICEF. And it's really important for us to kind of build a tribe, our own tribes, and actually be the change that we want to see in the world. And it's not just a women's challenge. Gender-based violence, it has been branded as something that has been a women's issue, but men are equally part of this conversation, right? And they an equally pivotal role in being able to change the stereotypes and the challenges that we face on a daily basis, right? And we're seeing some of that happening because, even within our spaces, we're seeing men go, this isn't okay. How can we become part of the solution? How do we transform the system? Because gender-based violence is also around power dynamics and patriarchy, right? And so it takes men's collective effort to help support the change that we're seeing, as well as kind of courageous and incredible women who are really pushing the boundaries on this discussion.
Nadia, that's all the time we have, unfortunately, but thank you so much for making time to speak to us about this very important demographic that's usually not considered when we talk about gender-based violence.